Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night and wondered, even for just a moment, what it actually means to be aware? To be you? I'm not talking about your name, your job, or your relationships. I'm talking about that mysterious something that makes you experience the world rather than just react to it like a complex machine. That sense of I am, that feels so fundamental yet so impossible to pin down. We use the word consciousness all the time, but what exactly are we referring to? Today, we're going to explore this fascinating and elusive concept that sits at the very heart of what it means to be human. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll have a deeper understanding of not just what consciousness might be, but also why it's so difficult to define and study, and why that difficulty itself might be revealing something profound about the nature of reality. The question of consciousness isn't just academic philosophy. It touches everything from our understanding of the mind and brain to ethics, artificial intelligence, and even our sense of purpose in the universe. So let's dive in. First, let's try to get clear on what we're talking about. Consciousness, at its most basic, refers to subjective experience, the feeling of being something, of having an inner life. It's the difference between merely processing information and actually experiencing something. Think about it this way. A thermometer can detect temperature, but it doesn't feel warmth or cold. A camera can capture light, but it doesn't see colors or beauty. At least, we don't think they do. This subjective quality of experience is what philosophers sometimes call qualia, the raw feels of sensations. The redness of red, the sharpness of pain, the particular quality of hearing a violin. These experiences seem impossible to fully communicate to someone who hasn't had them. How would you describe the taste of chocolate to someone who has never tasted it? Or the color blue to someone blind from birth? This brings us to what philosopher David Chalmers famously called the hard problem of consciousness, not just explaining what the brain does, but why and how any physical system gives rise to subjective experience at all. We can map neural correlates of consciousness, tracking which brain regions activate when we have certain experiences, but this doesn't explain why there's something it feels like to be us. Think about it. Why isn't it all just unconscious processing? Why the additional layer of experience? When you stub your toe, your nervous system sends signals to your brain, neurons fire, and somehow, mysteriously, there's also the feeling of pain. But why does that feeling exist at all? What purpose does it serve that couldn't be accomplished by just the physical processes themselves? Before we go further, I want to take a moment to thank you for joining me on this intellectual journey. If you're finding this exploration valuable, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. I create videos like this one that explore the deep questions of human existence, consciousness, and reality, questions that most people think about but rarely discuss openly. Your subscription helps support this work and build a community of curious minds. Now, let's move on to some of the major theories about what consciousness actually is. One approach is to look at consciousness as an emergent property of complex information processing. Just as wetness emerges from water molecules or temperature emerges from the motion of particles, perhaps consciousness emerges when information is processed in particularly complex and integrated ways. This is the basis of theories like integrated information theory, developed by neuroscientist Giulia Tononi. The idea is that consciousness corresponds to a certain kind of integrated information that a system possesses. When information is integrated in the right way, when many different parts of a system affect each other in complex, reciprocal relationships, consciousness arises. The more integrated the information, the more conscious the system. Another perspective comes from global workspace theory, which suggests that consciousness is what happens when information is broadcast widely throughout the brain. Imagine your brain as a massive company with many departments working on different tasks. Most of these departments work unconsciously, but occasionally, when something important comes up, that information is broadcast to a global workspace where it becomes accessible to many different systems at once. This global broadcast is what we experience as consciousness. Then there are theories that focus on the role of attention and awareness. Perhaps consciousness is fundamentally about directing our mental resources to certain aspects of our experience. When you're driving a familiar route, you might do it on autopilot, not consciously aware of each turn and stop. But when something unexpected happens, consciousness kicks in to help you navigate the novel situation. But there's another, more radical possibility that some philosophers and scientists have proposed. What if consciousness is not produced by the brain at all, but is instead a fundamental feature of reality? This is the view of panpsychism, the idea that consciousness, or something like it, is present to some degree in all things. Just as matter and energy are fundamental to our universe, perhaps consciousness is too. This might sound strange at first, that it addresses a key problem. How does consciousness arise from non-conscious matter? If consciousness is somehow fundamental, we don't need to explain how it emerges from something entirely different. Instead, complex consciousness like ours would be a highly organized form of something that's present in simpler forms throughout the universe. Of course, this raises its own questions. If consciousness is fundamental, how does it relate to the physical world? How do simple forms of consciousness combine to create the unified consciousness we experience? These are active areas of research and debate. Now, let's consider some implications of these different views. If consciousness is purely the product of brain activity, what happens when we create artificial intelligence with brain-like complexity? Could an AI system be conscious? How would we know? What ethical responsibilities would we have toward such systems? Or consider the question of animal consciousness. We share evolutionary history and brain structures with many animals, so it seems likely that many species have some form of consciousness. But what is it like to be a bat, as philosopher Thomas Nagel famously asked? Or an octopus with its distributive nervous system? Or even a simple organism like a worm? These questions aren't just philosophical, they have real implications for how we treat other beings, how we think about our place in the universe, and even how we approach the development of technology. As we wrap up our exploration, I want to leave you with a thought. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about consciousness is not just that it exists, but that it's capable of wondering about itself. The universe has somehow organized itself, at least in the small corner, into beings that can question their own existence and nature. We are the universe become conscious of itself, trying to understand its own consciousness. Whatever consciousness ultimately turns out to be, whether an emergent property of brain activity, a fundamental aspect of reality, or something else entirely, the fact that we can ask these questions at all is nothing short of astonishing. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of the deepest mysteries of existence. If you found value in this exploration, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. What aspect of consciousness fascinates you most? Have you had experiences that make you question the nature of the awareness? Don't forget to check the description for ways to support the channel and keep these conversations going. And of course, subscribe for more videos that delve into the profound questions that shape our understanding of ourselves and our world. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning.